So, The Mandalorian Chapter 14 is titled The Tragedy, and it was actually directed by Robert Rodriguez.
Hmm.
Um, and I don't know, do you have any backstory on his connection to Star Wars or his involvement in a potential Boba Fett series? I feel like there was something there where he was connected to that in some way, but I might have to
I
look
can
into
do
that.
some quick looking.
Okay.
I saw some. I didn't really dive into this. I saw he was maybe like even actually a replacement director for this episode. Someone else might
Right.
have been on the plate for this, and then he stepped in. So I don't know. But as you start talking about this, I'll maybe do some quick
Yeah.
googling and see if there's any connection there. I don't know of any, but
So I'm curious if he would be in the running as a director for um the Boba Fett series or even a showrunner or something
yeah,
like that if there is a
right,
Boba Fett series, which I think
right.
there probably will be.
Well, they've been
Um,
talking about a Boba Fett series, so I don't know. Maybe.
yeah. So while you're looking into that, Adam, I'll start with kind of my overall thoughts about this episode, non-spoiler for right now. And it was just another great episode. I mean, it was short, it was pretty short, but they packed a lot into that amount of time. They packed a lot into this 30-minute episode. Um, and I love again.
Yeah. So real quick, 30-minute
Yeah.
episode. Like I knew it was going to be short coming into this. I was fully expecting it in our watch party. I even talked about this that I think that I thought that this episode was going to be them on their way to Tython,
Hmm.
and then something happens along the way.
Right.
But I was
But
very wrong. And this
yeah.
episode for 30 minutes, and I don't want to get into spoilers just yet,
Hmm.
but I was so wrong about that. Um,
Yeah.
and this episode, for being a 30-minute episode, was jam packed with stuff, and it was one of those quality over quantity things because um, for another 20 minutes, 10 or 20 minutes to make this a longer episode, I don't know what else we could do because this, as a 30 some minute episode, was just packed.
It was. It was. And yeah,
And
and
it was
I
paced
really
well.
enjoyed
Like,
it.
I don't feel like it
It
was rushed,
Mhm. Yeah, it was pretty well paced, and, I for some reason, I think they're being that we're in these last 3 episodes of the season, they're not wasting any time at this point, they're going straight to the next destination, and the Mando's top priority is the child right now, and, either protecting him or getting him to somebody that can protect him or even train him at this point, so I had a feeling that we'd be going to Tython, and it happened very quickly, and I loved the visuals once again, just the look of the planet and specifically um, of where they get the kind of the ruins of the Jedi Temple, and we'll get into that in a little bit. Um, but I just thought it was surprising. It really raised the stakes quite a bit. The episode's called the tragedy, and,
Yeah,
and there's
just a
some
little bit.
things in here that you could
Yeah,
call a little bit tragic that we're going to get into.
yeah,
Um, that really, made it feel like our characters were in danger. And I think any great series or story or show does that, really puts the characters in a situation where they're challenged and there's some real danger to them.
yeah. So we're
Um,
dancing around some stuff. You
yeah.
want us to get into spoilers?
Yeah, let's go ahead and get into our spoilers. So hit the spoiler warning. All right, so let's get into our jetpacks and bantha fodder for this episode.
Yeah.
Um, I'd like to start with the beginning of the episode with the exchange between Mando and Grogu on the Razor Crest.
Hmm.
I just love this whole exchange and this moment that they have. And Mando even saying, you're very special, kid.
Yeah.
And
The whole
I
thing,
don't think,
him kind of like testing out the name, even just kind of
yeah,
like
yeah, and just to
Grogu,
get
Grogu, and then just almost
right,
like everyone last week got just brought in by that sound that Grogu makes when he hears his name,
hmm
and it's like Mando's playing with that, just when he keeps wanting to hear that, and, just keeps saying the name and repeating it, and then
yeah,
he's almost
it,
starting
it-
to train him a little bit too, which is interesting.
right. Yeah, he's working on that a little bit, and I think it
Hmm.
was just a really fatherly moment, and, I think when he says you're very special, I don't think he just means that you're special because you have the Force. I think he's saying you're special to me.
Yeah, there's a lot of
We
layers
have
to this. Yeah.
yeah, and, in that vein, Mando's also trying to justify, he's explaining to Grogu why he has to leave him with this Jedi,
Mhm.
but he's really justifying it, to
No, he's
himself.
convincing
He's trying
himself.
trying to
Yeah,
convince himself that
absolutely.
this is the right thing to do because he's grown so attached to him and,
Yeah,
um, doesn't wanna leave him, and we as the audience don't wanna see them separate either. So it's really heart-wrenching stuff,
yeah.
for sure. And then within this scene, we hear him say "Dank Farrik," which I'm
It's been
guessing
in
is some
almost every
kinda.
episode. Yeah, yeah, they've really been sneaking that in there a lot, almost every episode
Yeah.
this season. That's almost
I'm
kind of like
thinking this
their
is, swearing in some way,
yeah,
in Star
yeah,
Wars
yeah.
swear.
No, this is their PG version of some type of swear word now, and
Yeah.
I don't know. That's kind of catching on. I like it,
Yeah, yeah,
and it
yeah.
seems like fans are kind of latching on to it. I even tweeted it out after the episode on our podcast account, and I just said "dank Farrik," man, because of this episode.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, it's fun. I think it's fun anyway.
Yeah, I agree. I like it. It's a jetpack for me. And then another one, we see I mentioned this a little earlier. We see the ruins of the Jedi Temple and the Seeing Stone, and
Yeah.
I just thought the look of that was so cool, and it reminded me kind of like a Weathertop type thing
Oh,
from Lord of
okay,
the Rings,
okay. I get that.
but more
I get
like
that vibe. Yeah.
Jedi
Hmm.
oriented.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, and the whole look of the Seeing Stone, and when Yoda, when Grogu was connecting with the Force and
Hmm.
kind of sending out, it looked like some kind of Force signal being sent up or
Yeah, it
something
was like
like
a
that.
beacon or something.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and that beacon even reminded
Or
me
smoke
of
signal.
like Return of the King, um,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and
I can see
everything.
it.
So
Right.
it kind of
Right.
had that feel for me.
Hmm.
So I thought that was just really cool. I don't know if you had anything to add when it comes to that stuff on Tython.
Oh, I don't know if I have anything to add to that particular part. It's just really cool for me seeing places like Python in live action. You know, bring that
Yeah.
stuff into life. Python, I guess, was already canon
Hmm.
due to a Doctor Aphra comic book that I have to check out yet. Um, but just seeing that place again, you know, like as I mentioned last week, I've read the book. I think last week we talked about how it was in video games, Knights of the Old Republic for sure. And
Hmm.
I think Liv mentioned even one of the Jedi Knight games as well. But
Yeah.
just seeing that type of stuff, and there's so many things in this episode we're going to talk about later with Easter eggs, but just seeing Tython for real and that ancient Jedi temple, I love that stuff, and I'm so happy to see that in this series.
Yeah. The second season just continues to expand upon the mythology of Star Wars
Hmm.
and the universe, expanding that universe and world building and um, all those things, which is just excellent. You know, um, and I'll tell you what blew me away. What was a major jetpack for me is when the Slave One just appears in the atmosphere. That I
Yeah,
was like, my reaction to that,
that was like
I was
that was one of the first
I was like,
oh
"What?"
crap moments of this episode.
Yeah.
Is, uh, I
It
was
looks so
I
dang
mean,
good
I was
too.
expecting someone to show up there, but when you see the Slave One show up, it's like, woo boy,
Yeah.
this
And
is
that's another again, just like the Thrawn thing, I was completely
yeah.
surprised by this. I did not expect to see Boba Fett in this episode at all. And
I was
he's
almost
must
wondering how Boba Fett was going to fit into this period, the rest of
yeah,
the season. You know,
because I didn't think he'd show up for the rest of the season, maybe at the
I
end or
thought he
something.
would, but like
Yeah,
when we're starting to do this type of stuff, I was honestly thinking that Tython would kind of be like the last place that we see this season. You know,
right.
like the big
Mhm.
showdown would happen on Tython, and you know that last season it happened on Navarro. I thought
Right.
this season would happen on Tython. You know, that's kind of where they're
Mhm.
heading. I thought it might take an episode or two to finally get there,
Yeah.
but we got Tython out of the way in 30 minutes, and then Boba Fett shows up here. He's tracking Mando, which makes sense. You know, he was kind of watching over him on Tatooine, so you know he knows where he's at. Um, and I guess he's just kind of hanging back and following him, you know, get that armor back. But I was not expecting it, and I was almost to the point where I thought we wouldn't see him again because I didn't know how he was going to fit back
Who's
into
gonna
this.
fit into the story.
Yeah,
Yeah. Um, but man, they sure made it work, and we got to see the return of Fennec Shand as
yeah,
well.
yeah.
So that kinda answered that question at the in season 1, I forget
Hmm.
which episode it was, maybe
Chapter 5. Gunslinger.
5.
Yep.
Um, and it was Boba Fett who found her
Hmm.
apparently, and
Yeah, yeah, we got that answer. Everyone was right. I was wrong. I did not think that was Boba Fett. I was
right,
adamant
you
that
thought
that was
maybe it
not
was
Boba Fett. Yeah, but
maybe Cobb
I thought it
Vanth
was Cobb
or
Vanth. Yeah.
yeah, uh-huh. So and we got to see her just sharp shooting abilities, which
Hmm.
she had a lot of great action.
Yeah, she got some
Um,
good action.
yeah, and we also saw like kind of her internal workings, and
Yes.
I think
Yeah,
like how
that's a
she
good way to put it.
was, yeah,
Got to see her
um,
insides.
yeah, that was pretty interesting.
So
I think,
she's kind of she. I guess she was kind of dead,
yeah,
and you know, somehow she returned.
somehow
um,
Palpatine returned
uh,
somehow.
that was actually kind of mentioned almost, not to Palpatine specifically, but that type of idea was here twice in this episode.
Yeah,
Fennec Shand is back. We don't really know how she was saved, except
hmm
for she opens up her shirt and you see that she's kind of robotic underneath now.
hmm
So kind of Luke
yeah,
in Empire, she's saved by the robotics. Then
yeah.
Boba Fett mentions that he
Boba
was
Fett,
also
yeah.
left for dead.
Mhm.
And then the quote that he says, and it's
In the Sarlacc.
yeah, I kind of left for dead in the desert. And the quote that he says is escaping me a little bit, but somehow he's almost like fortune smiles on the wretched, or something like that.
Mhm.
And that's really
Mhm.
all the answer that we get. Very similarly
Yeah,
to cloning
right.
and dark magic. So
Secrets only the Sith knew.
yeah,
Um,
but I mean
but yeah,
that's all the
but
information we got.
I think we could get more though. I think that
We
in
could
a
get more.
Boba Fett series, I think we might see
Yeah,
how that
sure.
happened,
We could get more, and we got a little bit more
Right.
about Palpatine too. So I mean, that stuff
Yeah,
gets fleshed out later. But right off the
right.
bat, that's all we got.
For now, we don't really need it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um, and speaking of Boba Fett, we kind of get. I mean, some people love Boba Fett from the original trilogy, and he's
I
a
am.
cool
Yeah,
character.
I gotta say,
Um,
I'm very happy for Boba Fett fans because this is kind of
yeah,
almost. I don't want to say vindication, but this is almost kind of like, you know, since Legends, this is the first time Boba Fett has really gotten to shine, and it has to be super exciting for huge Boba Fett fans out there.
yeah, and I think it's really interesting. With this whole Boba Fett situation and bringing him back, that he gets multiple ways to shine in this
Yeah,
episode.
yeah,
Not he shines without the armor on, and
yeah,
he's just a complete BA badass. You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
And he's taking these
BAMF.
guys. What's that?
BAMF.
Yeah, BAMF. I'm not gonna say the whole thing for that
No.
one. But it was kind of similar to Rogue One with Chirrut and how he was kind of taking those stormtroopers out with his stick. Stick, I guess there's probably a better word for it. But this was even more brutal. This was like he was just eliminating those stormtroopers left and right.
Yeah, violent. I mean, like, and
Yeah.
we've seen kind of that stuff before, even some films, and then definitely last season where stormtrooper armor just shatters. But this is almost
hmm
another level, and you saw some of the aftermath of what he did to these stormtroopers, and it's a lot.
Yeah.
He and like you said, he got multiple ways to shine in that way in his combat.
hmm
I thought his dialogue was really great.
Yeah.
I loved Tamir Morrison's, how he does that. I don't know if it's just an accent or if it's just the way he's saying some things. Um,
hmm
I thought it was, for me, never really being a Boba Fett fan, and I wasn't. I said on the show before, I didn't really want him to come back. I'm fine with him being dead and staying dead. Um, One episode here made me a Boba Fett fan.
I
Uh,
think they convinced me too,
yeah,
because on the same boat that you are with that.
I mean, we really still
So.
didn't get a why he's back anymore, and I kind of wanted that, but I
hmm
didn't. We didn't really get it here. Why bring him back yet? But it worked, and it was really well done. It was really cool.
Yeah.
So won me over right there.
And I'm wondering if originally Jon Favreau wanted to make a Boba Fett show, and maybe Lucasfilm at that time said no because the Boba Fett thing was already in the works. Um, because they were planning a
I
Boba
think there
Fett
was some
film,
type of
actually.
I think there was some type of thing about him saying that he wanted to make a Boba Fett show or movie or something.
Hmm.
Yeah, right.
Right. And then it's interesting how he got to maybe then while Jon Favreau has been making the Mandalorian, Lucasfilm's like, oh, that whole film thing fell through, so go ahead and throw him in your show, and then maybe we can even give him his own series, and maybe they have the makings of a script already based off of what was going to be the film. Who
Right, and I
knows?
did do some
Um,
looking before about the Robert Rodriguez thing, and I don't think he's actually been tied to anything yet as far
okay.
as Boba Fett,
Okay.
if officially or unofficially.
Hmm.
But if that was like a like an audition for Robert Rodriguez, I think he's doing okay.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And and then we get one of the tragedies of this episode for me, and I was completely floored by this. The Razor Crest being completely obliterated.
Mm.
Um, and that just I was like, I literally said, "No!"
I did too.
Like,
I did too.
"No."
I was sitting downstairs by
Yeah.
myself watching this for the first time in the morning, so I didn't get spoiled throughout the day. And by myself sitting down here, I just, like you said, audible. No, like,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I mean, you see that laser coming in from the heavens, and then the next shot you
Mhm.
see is the Razor Crest, and like it
I mean, that thing's
and it
been
didn't just get blown up, it got wiped from the face of the earth. There
it's
was
gone.
nothing
Yeah.
left of that thing. It was almost like it's almost like
There's
they're
just that
saying
metal ball and the Beskar spear.
it's
That's
almost
it.
like they're saying, "Hey, we actually meant to do that." Like
Mhm.
that wasn't an
Mhm.
accident. We meant to blow that thing up. But
Right. For sure.
I'll be honest, that was the biggest tragedy of the whole show for me.
I was
We'll
devastated.
talk
I'm
about the
like,
other thing
"Man,
later, but I was
I know
half
it's not quite the Falcon, but still,
I mean,
like, that's
almost
almost
it's
like
getting
destroying
there.
the Falcon, you
It
know?"
was getting there. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
if this show would go, go on for, I mean, it's definitely going on for 3 seasons. I think by the end of 3 seasons, the show, the the Razor Crest would have really been almost like on par with a Falcon, and then you go longer
Yeah.
with the show, and it might, I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
it's weird to say that overtaking the Falcon, but
Mhm.
Mandalorian is just so popular with everybody, not just diehard Star Wars
Yeah.
fans. That the Razor Crest has become almost iconic.
It's iconic.
It's
It is
it
iconic, and
if it's
it's
not,
been beat up, it
yeah, yeah.
survived, and then it
If it
gets
hasn't
obliterated.
overtaken the Falcon, it's already a very close second for a lot of
Yeah.
people. I think, me
Yeah, it's a
included.
close second for sure. And I wonder if it's gonna get rebuilt at some point, hopefully.
I don't know.
Bruce Wayne rebuilt Wayne Manor
Well, I mean,
in
that's
the
not the
Dark Knight
only
trilogy,
Razor
so
Crest out there. I can't believe that that's the only type of Razor Crest out there.
right,
The Millennium Falcon isn't the only type of Corellian freighter out there. So, I mean, there has to be some
right.
other type of, there has to be some other, and there's actually been some pictures floating around Twitter of people finding a Razor Crest sitting on, was it Rise of Skywalker? I think they found it in, like maybe on Agent
Mhm.
Kloss. There was a Razor Crest sitting in the background, which obviously now can't be that Razor Crest.
Right,
Um,
right.
so there has to be some other maybe Razor Crests out there, or maybe I don't know.
Yeah, and even though this was a tragedy that this happened, I have this on my jetpacks because
It
it
was
really raised the stakes.
yeah.
It was like, "Okay,
It was
we're in harm
emotional.
now, we're in harm," normally Mando lands on top
Hmm.
eventually, but this was a blow, and then
Yeah,
the second tragedy this episode is Grogu getting taken by the Dark Troopers, um, and so we get to see these Dark Troopers, they're
confirmed
canon
Dark
now.
Troopers. By the way, yeah, it
Yeah,
says the words
they're
Dark
co
Troopers.
right. So what did you think of that
I
whole
was all
thing with the Dark
so
Troopers
I
and
don't. So I was almost still in shock from the Razor Crest. The rest of it was almost like a blur for a while.
yeah, yeah.
And the Razor Crest was, like I said, was almost the worst part of that episode for me, even beyond, because I was half expecting a kidnapping of Baby Yoda. You would think at some point Grogu's going to end up in enemy hands. They're after
I
him.
figured that would happen. I didn't think it'd be
I didn't
till
think
the
it would be
end of the
the
season. Like,
yeah,
I thought
yeah.
it would be
Now
like
it's
a
right.
cliffhanger at the
It,
end or something, but
yeah, 100% same.
yeah.
That's what I thought we were heading for. Is
Mhm.
have to wait through the summer to find out what happens to
Right.
Grogu. And maybe we still end up with that. I don't know,
Yeah,
but
maybe.
I wasn't expecting it this episode, but I was almost too emotionally drained from losing the Razor Crest to be any extra emotionally drained about what happened to Grogu. And like I
Yeah.
said, it was partially because I was expecting it at some point. Um, and I was almost preparing for it because we see everything happening. The remnants are closing in on them, so they know they're there. Um, so as the episode's unfolding, I'm almost thinking, okay, this is going to happen this episode, and then it just does. I was not
Hmm.
expecting the Razor Crest, and so that one for me was more
Yeah. No.
shocking and more
Yeah.
actually emotional for me. I mean, seeing Mando react,
Yeah.
and
Me
like
too.
you don't see his face, so you don't know that
Hmm.
he's emotionally affected by it, but you feel it somehow,
Yeah.
and seeing him sift through the ashes of his ship that's gone now, and it was a lot.
Hmm. It was. So yeah, and then towards the end of the episode, we see Grogu actually using the Force against the stormtroopers, which I thought was a very cool
Yeah,
scene. But
he's going hog wild on them. I
yeah,
almost think that his abilities were amplified a little bit after coming out of that force trance thing.
could be.
And I don't remember if I mentioned the Valley of the Jedi on this show, which was another Dark Forces and Jedi Knight thing. Um, where I might have mentioned on this show, and if I didn't, it was on when Coffee with Kenobi. But Valley of the Jedi was this Legends thing where whoever visited that, if they were existing Force users, their powers would be amplified, and if they weren't Force users, then they could actually maybe gain some Force powers there. I almost wonder if something of that nature happened with the child there, because
Right.
he was really going, force chokes and force throws and doing all kinds of stuff here
Yeah, it
where
was getting pretty brutal there. He was
it
he was
was
almost going dark side a little bit
yeah.
in that scene.
Right. Where before that, we've seen him this season only do a couple pulls and things like that, real easy minor stuff.
Hmm.
Last season he did the fire bubble thing, and
Yeah,
so there's a little bit of that there. But I almost wonder if that thing amplified his power a little bit.
it's possible, and
That's just a
and I
theory.
still think it's interesting that it really drains him.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I wonder why that is. And I know you have a thought
Yeah. So
about
for
that.
me, I think that's just Ahsoka said that his abilities are starting to fade. They will
Hmm.
fade. And it's been how many years now since he was taken from that temple. So hiding his powers, even dampening his powers. And the kid, I mean, is young. So
Yeah.
trying to get past dampening those abilities for decades, and forgetting how to do a lot of this. Not flexing those muscles, that type of thing. I think it just drains him.
I'm wondering if it's related to them extracting maybe midichlorians from him
That
and
could be too.
it being related to that. That's kind
Could
of
be
what
too.
my little mini theory is about
Hmm.
that, but I don't know. I don't yeah, maybe we'll find out. Um but yeah, I mean those were all of my jetpacks. Did you have any others that I didn't mention?
No, I think that about covers it for me.
Okay. Um the only two very minor nitpicks I had, if, just cuz we have a bantha fodder section here, and they're very minor once again. Just I felt that the action scenes were awesome, but I felt like it just got a little bit redundant with all the stormtroopers and like waves of stormtroopers and taking them out. But it did give the characters all a chance to shine in that action, including Boba Fett. Um, and everything. So
Yeah,
that was just a very minor
I
nitpick.
can see what you mean there. I thought it raised the stakes a lot because I mean it felt seeing how much they had to fight to get out of just that one transport.
Hmm.
And then for me, as I was watching and seeing that second transport come in, I'm thinking, there's no way. It took them this much to get through one transport, and then the second one comes in, and it's just, for me, it felt like they're done at this point. So
Right.
for me, it raised the stakes, but I can see how it felt a little bit weird. For
Hmm.
me, the only thing I have about that whole thing, there's actually two little nitpicks I have here. The first one being Mando never really just grabs his jetpack again. He just kind of runs off,
Yeah.
which is weird.
Yeah.
And we talked
Yeah.
about that, Nicole and I talked about that in our Discord server.
Because he could have pursued the Dark Troopers with
Yeah,
if he had the jetpack,
yeah,
you know?
yeah. He could have even gotten to Grogu quicker with the jetpack, but he
Mhm.
never really
Right.
picks it back up. Boba Fett orders him
Mhm.
to take it off, and for him protecting Grogu, I understand him, complying with that and taking it off, which
Yeah.
is still kind of a weird request, when
Yeah.
you're disarming to take off the jetpack, but yeah, whatever. Um,
I think it was just a method used by the filmmakers to
yeah,
allow
yeah, yeah,
baby or
right.
to allow Grogu to be captured pretty much, you know?
Yeah, that's fair. But I mean, logically for me, it's just kind of weird that he
Yeah,
never
yeah,
really
yeah.
just runs
No,
back and grabs the
I'm
jetpack.
with you.
But then also, Fennec Shand for me had a couple weird things. As she's and we're talking about the waves of stormtroopers. So as she's shooting at these stormtroopers, she sees the guy setting up the e-web, and she
Yeah.
shoots everyone around them.
Right,
I
right,
mean,
right, right.
take a shot at the guy that's setting up the
Yeah,
e-web that's going to blow
yeah.
you apart in 2 seconds. So
Mhm.
for me, that was one.
Yep.
Second, when the E-Web starts shooting, she gets up on top of the rock formations and runs down so that they have a clear shot at her. When they all miss, of course, but
Right.
there was cover. She could have just ran behind the rocks and then repositioned and
Yeah.
popped up. That for me just was, and I
I
know
think
it's
there
just for
was
action. I get it's just
Yeah.
for effect and that type of stuff. But logically, it's just like,
I think some of the
why?
logic within the action scenes was a little,
It was a little off.
um
There
yeah,
was a couple head
yeah,
scratchers for me there. Yeah.
right, for sure. And then my only other bantha fodder for this episode was when Gideon's ship is traveling through hyperspace, coming towards the camera. It looked just slightly off, like it looked like almost animated versus real. But I can't complain too much because the visuals have been so good this season. That just looks slightly off to me, and almost it looked like it was out of like Rebels instead of the Mandalorian. You know what I mean? Just looked kind of animated,
Yeah.
but
I
yeah, that
get
was
that.
my only other nitpick that I had.
Cool.
So let's head into our Suga for this week's episode, where we look at any Easter eggs or references. I think one of the
There was none.
lines. I'm sorry,
No
I
Easter
didn't hear
eggs,
you
no
there.
references. There was none.
There was none. Zip.
Yeah.
Um, actually, Boba Fett says,
Oh,
"I'm
you
a
found one?
simple man making his way through the galaxy," which is very
I
similar to
love that.
Jango Fett's line of,
Yeah.
I'm just a
Very
simple
similar,
guy
not
trying to make his
exact.
way in the
Yeah.
universe.
Yep.
Hmm.
I love that. And then he actually says, like my father before me,
Yeah, like my father
which is,
before me.
very Jedi.
I'm a Jedi, like my father before me.
I love that line. And I've seen / heard a little bit of like nitpicking with like fan service stuff. I say I
Mhm.
love that. And I've talked
Yeah.
about fan service before, but I'm here as a fan to be serviced. So service me, give me stuff
Yeah,
like
yeah,
this.
yeah.
I think those references are awesome. I love those references. So I'll never complain about that.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and I don't think they overdo it in this show. I don't think they
No,
do
right.
it just for the sake of doing it. I mean, I think that there's always some reason
Yeah,
within the story,
yeah.
and, I don't want them to get to a point where they're just overusing references and fan service, and because I
Hmm.
don't like there to be too much of it, but I think they do a pretty good job. And, you had mentioned here
Yeah,
about
so
Boba's chain code.
Boba at one point pulls up his armor, and it's after at one point, kind of another one of those interesting things. Boba just leaves them for a while so he can go steal his armor back, which
Right.
they're fighting for their lives. Actually, Fennec is fighting for her life. Mando's knocked out, and Boba's off getting his armor.
So,
So
do you think he put a new rocket in his jetpack or something? Because it had to have been missing one since Cobb Vanth used it, right?
I don't know. Maybe that's what took him so long. Maybe he was getting dressed and
Maybe.
he had to fix his rocket. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, he just kind of runs off and gets his armor. So the whole thing before about giving Boba the armor is Mando questions is have you taken the oath? Are you real Mandalorian? That type of stuff.
Hmm.
And Boba later to show him his validity. First of all, he pulls up his armor and shows his chain code to him. First of all, he says, "This is me here. I'm Boba Fett. My father was Jango Fett." We found out, Jango Fett has been made officially Mandalorian in canon for the first time since
Yeah, he was a foundling.
Legends. Yeah, so he's a foundling, so he's official.
Hmm.
It doesn't matter what what happened in Clone Wars. That was just a little bit of a bad blood thing, I guess. Um, because Clone Wars, it was like season 2 or something like that. They said that Django was not a real Mandalorian.
Hmm.
But yeah, for me, it's fine. I don't.
Yeah,
I think it's perfect. I think it's perfectly fine. I think it's
yeah,
just a bad blood thing
doesn't bother me any.
because we've seen that on Mandalore before. Where what is considered a real Mandalorian.
Hmm.
But Django is a foundling, so that all fits for me. The other parts of his chain code. So first of all, there's a reference to Concord Dawn, which is another one of those planets in the Mandalore sector, which has been in canon for a long time. It's actually it has been in canon. It was in Legends for a
It was in
long time. Yeah.
it was in Rebels too,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yep. But that
Concord Dawn.
Yep, but Concord Dawn did get mentioned in there. The other thing that got mentioned was there's a part that I believe says mentor, and then it says Jaster, which seems to be a reference to Jaster Muriel, who was in Legends was a mentor for Django, uh,
Mm.
and also was tossed around as a possible real name for Boba Fett before Attack of the Clones, and then Attack of the Clones came around and kind of wiped out that backstory thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Jaster Muriel got a mention there as well, which was pretty cool.
So did you have to like be able
You
to
had to
translate
translate from
the?
Arabesh into, which I didn't do.
Yeah,
Someone
you let somebody else do
someone
that.
else did that for me, which was real nice of them.
Right.
But yeah, so those things translated kind of throughout those references, which is really neat.
Hmm.
A lot of people are also talking about a Raiders of the Lost Ark nod, and I really believe that has to come from the boulder scene.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Being chased by the boulder down the hill.
for sure.
And then the blue butterflies, which have been around in Star Wars actually for longer than I even realized. Um, they show up more than I knew.
Yeah,
Looking
I
into
haven't
these
really
things more.
noticed them much, to be honest.
Yeah, so they actually show up
I've
in some of
overlooked.
the video games on Battlefront 1 and 2 on Endor. They
Mm.
show up in some comics. They actually show up even in some of the animated shows as well, Clone Wars specifically, I believe. Um, I tend to think that that has something to do with the Force. I know that there's some
Hmm.
theories out there also about Ben Solo. I don't know that I buy into those theories yet. He is alive at this point, but he'd only be like 4 years old or something like that, I think.
Yeah, I wouldn't get too excited about it out there for the
Yeah.
Ben Solo fans just yet.
For me, I really think it comes down to more of a symbolic element of the Force being
Hmm.
present there or something like that.
Yeah,
The
I could see
Force
that.
being at work or something
Right.
like that.
Yeah, I think it's more on that level than
Yeah,
specific to maybe a certain character.
yeah.
So I'm with you. Um, yeah, and I think that brings us to our scores for the episode. And what would you give this one?
I'm easily at a 9, maybe a 9.5 for me. It wasn't quite perfect.
Hmm.
There's some things there that I was kind of like questioning and that we talked about earlier, some head scratch moments. So it's not quite perfect for me yet, but it might be my favorite episode of the season, which is kind of crazy. And we talked earlier about Jedi, and then we talked in our poll about how much I loved the Heiress. But man,
Hmm.
this episode was so good for
Yeah.
how short it was. It was so good. So it might be like a 9.5 for me.
Yeah, I feel like this episode felt very Star Wars to me, which I loved because we had the stuff with the Jedi Temple and we had the stuff with Boba Fett and we
Mm,
had the stormtroopers and Gideon and this Imperial ship and hyperspace and all that stuff felt very Star Wars to me, which I absolutely loved, and it really elevated the stakes, put those characters in danger, which I love as well. And yeah, for me, it's one of my favorites and definitely a 9 out of 10 for me. Aside from those minor nitpicks. But yeah, that's where I'm at with
nice.
it. And do you have any, predictions going forward? Any premonitions, force visions about what we might see in the next episode or the next two episodes for that matter?
Yeah. Well, so we're going after um, Miggs Mayfeld, for some reason. I
Hmm.
don't know why. I thought
Yeah,
that
he has
that
some
felt like a
insider
weird.
information.
Yeah, that felt like a weird connection to me, but I gotta have faith at this point, so we'll see where that goes.
Yeah.
So Mando has to be heading to pick up Miggs Mayfeld, so we're heading
Hmm.
to, I don't know, whatever that whatever that place was called. I should have wrote that down. Whatever
Is
Cara
it
Dune
that?
tells him, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So we're going to pick up him, obviously. But man, this episode kind of blew up a little bit of my kind of feel about where we're going. Like I talked about earlier, I thought that we would end on Tython, but we're not going to do that.
Hmm.
We're going to end somewhere else.
Right.
Baby, Grogu has already been captured. I
Hmm.
mean, so we don't have that to do. We're going to have to go try to get him back. I don't know where we go from here for 2 episodes. I
Yeah.
have those general ideas that those are the things that are going to happen, but I don't know.
My feeling is I think we might learn a little bit more about what exactly Moff Gideon wants with the child. Um, because he's going to have possession of him for right now. So we might learn a little bit more about that. I think we're definitely going to get, Mando's obviously going to get the information he needs to find Moff Gideon. And he's going to need more than himself to take on these dark troopers and stormtroopers and Moff Gideon. He's going to need,
Well, I mean, he's
definitely
got Boba
Cara
and
Dune and
Fennec,
Boba
and
Fett, and
yeah,
um,
he's
and I don't know if he
he's
goes to
going.
tries to get Bo-Katan
I see. That's
maybe
what
as
I thought. I
well,
thought Bo-Katan would factor back into this at some point. Maybe she does.
and she
She
might.
might. Maybe she does. I don't know. But I thought she would factor back into this. But so yeah, he's gonna end up with Boba and Fennec, and then he's gonna get Mayfeld, and it seems
Yeah.
like he's picking up Cara Dune there because she
Hmm.
seems a little bit ticked off that someone's hurting the kid. So
Right. Right. And I think we will definitely see a showdown between Moff Gideon and Mando, Beskar spear against Darksaber. I think we're definitely going to get that. So those would
seems
be
that way.
my premonitions for the
Nice.
upcoming. And that wraps it up for our Mandalorian Chapter 14 review.